Cuba stood as one of the most promising nations in Latin America and indeed the world. Its economy was stronger than that of many European nations, fueled by sugar, tobacco, and tourism, and supported by its close trading relationship with the United States. The island had the highest paid and largest middle class per capita of any country in Latin America. Far from being a nation people were fleeing, Cuba was a destination for immigrants, welcoming workers and entrepreneurs from Spain, the United States, and across the Caribbean, who sought opportunity on the island. Havana was a world-class city, often called the Paris of the Caribbean, with theaters, hotels, casinos, and a nightlife scene rivaling that of Miami or Paris. Cuba ranked near the top in food consumption, owned one of the largest foreign exchange reserves in the region, and led Latin America in television stations and modern amenities. For much of the hemisphere, Cuba was a model of prosperity and modernity. When Fidel Castro came to power in 1959, many expected reform, but few anticipated ruin. At first the economy remained relatively intact, but sweeping agrarian reform, rent controls, and nationalization of private property quickly undercut productivity. Sugar, cattle, and tobacco production began to falter. Foreign reserves were drained, and balance of payments deficits deepened. Within only a few years, the island that had once been the envy of Latin America was sliding into central planning, shortages, and dependency on Soviet subsidies. Over the following decades, the decline grew undeniable. Industrial growth slowed, electricity expansion fell near the bottom of the hemisphere, and food production lagged. Once proud exporters of sugar and rice, Cubans now faced rationing and scarcity. The dependency on Moscow grew absolute, and when the Soviet Union collapsed, Cuba entered the so-called special period. Blackouts, hunger, collapsing infrastructure, and mass emigration followed. A nation that once drew immigrants became a country desperate to send its own people abroad, with rickety boats crossing the Florida Straits in search of freedom and bread. The economic collapse was matched by political repression. Freedoms were curtailed, dissent punished, and the Cuban people lost not only their prosperity, but also their voice. Instead of leading Latin America into a new era, Cuba became a warning of how quickly wealth can be squandered and how a once thriving middle class can be destroyed. Cuba's story is a tragedy written in reverse, from prosperity to poverty, from immigration to exile, from promise to despair. The island that once had one of the highest standards of living in the hemisphere was dragged into shortages, fear, and repression. That is Fidel Castro's true legacy, not liberation, but the eclipse of a people who once stood at the very summit of possibility.